who was the first Marvel hero. Human Torch was the first to appear in the 1939 released comic with the creative title Marvelcomic, and had nothing to do with the today's Human Torch. Back then he was an android made by a scientist. What is Earth-616? Earth-616 is the main universe of the Marvel Comics in which most stories, and according to Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, also the MCU movies take place. Other notable universes would be Earth-96283 for my beloved Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man trilogy. How rich is Iron Man? According to the Forbes Fictional 15, Tony Stark has an estimated net worth of $8.8 billion. Bruce Wayne, on the other hand, only has $6.5 billion. But both of them look broke compared to the real GOAT, Scrooge McDuck, with an estimated fortune of $33.5 billion.
Ah! It's not a liquid!
What does J.A.R.V.I.S stand for? J.A.R.V.I.S stands for Just a Rather Very Intelligent System and is the AI assistant of Tony Stark.
How old is Steve Rogers? In the MCU timeline, Steve was born July 4th, 1918. At the age of 25, he joined the military and became a super soldier in 1943. He defeats Red Skull and goes into the ice 1945 before his 27th birthday. After 66 years, in 2011, he comes out of the ice, where he is now 26, but technically 92 years old. At age 27, but actually 93, he fights Loki in the Avengers in 2012. In 2014, he fights the Winter Soldier and takes down S.H.I.E.L.D., where he is 29 but actually 95 years old. At the old age of 96, he fights Ultron in 2015. At almost 100 years old, he fights Thanos and fails, and the snap happens in 2018. 5 years later, he fights Thanos again and wins, bringing everyone back, and after that he returns the stones and goes back in time to find Peggy in 1949. At the ripe age of 112, but really 179. He meets Sam on the bench by the lake in 2023. And honestly, how is he still standing at that age?
Who is Stan Lee? Stan Lee was an iconic comic book writer, producer, editor, and publisher. He co-produced some of the biggest Marvel heroes like Spiderman, Iron Man, the X-Men, the Hulk, Thor, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Antman, and the Fantastic Four. He also has countless cameos in almost every Marvel movie.
Are you Tony Stank?
Yes, this is Tony Stank. You're in the right place. Thank you for that. Never dropping that, by the way. Table for one, Mr. Stank.
Who are the Avengers? In the comics, I feel like almost every character became an Avenger at some point, but the OG Avengers are Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and somehow Hawkeye?
If the world didn't need superheroes, I'd work at a carnival.
Who is the strongest Avenger? Well, it's definitely not Hawkeye, but it's still a much debated topic. And even though there's no one answer, at least in the MCU, it's probably the Scarlet Witch or Captain Marvel. In the comics, it gets a bit more difficult since there are just too many completely broken characters. So basically whoever the writers wants to be the strongest in that moment. How does Spider-Man stick to things? Of course, there are again multiple answers to that question. In Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films, Peter grows microscopic barbed hairs that allow him to stick to walls, even though I have no idea how that works with shoes or a full bodysuit. And in the comics, it is explained that he manipulates electromagnetic fields to induce attraction, which lets him climb any surface, kinda like a real spider. Is Thor really a god? The character Thor is, well, obviously inspired by the real-life Thor, but in the Marvel universe, even though he is referred to as the God of Thunder multiple times, he's more like a powerful alien with control over the weather, including rain and lightning, and enhanced strength, and an expanded lifespan compared to humans, since he's from Asgard, which is from outer space. Where is Venom from? Venom's origins can be tracked to a race of symbiotes from the planet Clintar. I have no idea how to pronounce that. These beings merge with hosts, and the combined entity tends to have a personality based on both the symbiote and the host itself. What were the original designs of the Avengers? I mean, I know that these designs are old and all, but why is Hulk looking like Frankenstein's monster? And Iron Man is looking like he's trying to pull off a C-3PO cosplay. Thor is just straight up He-Man. The Wasp is giving me huge Tinkerbell vibes. But Antman honestly looks like a boss. Who was the first villain to beat the Avengers? In Avengers 2, Space Venom defeated the Avengers temporarily right after they were formed, but the first real full-on victory was probably Khan in Avengers 8, a time-traveling warlord from the future. He captures all of them and takes control over the world using his futuristic tech. What is the worst Marvel movie ever made? According to Rotten Tomatoes, it's either Ant-Man and the Wasp or The Eternals. But for me personally, it's probably Captain Marvel. How many Marvel movies are there? Currently there is a total of 35 MCU movies, and damn, that's way more than I thought, with even more in development. And also a total of 20 live action shows. They be milking that thing, holy shit. Do superheroes pay taxes? Yeah, I don't really think they do. I mean, Spiderman is even more broke than me. Tony Stark is just too rich to pay taxes. Hawkeye and Black Widow are assassins living under the radar. Thor isn't even from Earth. And the only one who probably always pays his taxes is Steve.
Hi, I'm Captain America.
Here to talk about how to evade taxes.
What is Vibranium? Vibranium is an extremely rare metal that has the unique ability of absorbing all kinds of energy, including kinetic energy, sound waves, and vibrations. The stored energy can then be redirected.
It's like they're lining up. Well, they're excited.
It was famously used to make Captain America's shield and Black Panther's suit. It is found in Wakanda and is believed to have landed on Earth as a meteorite, but sadly, it is not real. What is Adamantium? Same as Vibranium, Adamantium is an extremely rare alloy that is basically indestructible. The Weapon X program used it to enhance Wolverine's claws and skeleton. What of the two is stronger? There is no official answer, but I personally believe that Adamantium is stronger since it is basically indestructible and we saw Cap's shield break already. But Vibranium has other advantages since it's a lot lighter, so it really depends on the task. What are the worst powers? Some characters are gifted with reality-altering powers, others are a bit less fortunate, like Bailey Hoskins, who has the ability to detonate his own body, but, well, it would kill him. Or Walrus. Well, he's literally just a walrus. Also interesting is Carol Campbell. She's able to set her own body on fire, kinda like the Human Torch, which sounds pretty good in theory, till you realize she isn't immune to her own flames. DC versus Marvel. Who's better? If we're just talking earnings, then Marvel movies lapped DC like 3 times already.
Don't say it! Don't you say it! Left! Come on!
But really it just comes down to personal preference, and it's also okay to just enjoy both. Who can beat Thanos? Well, it's definitely not the Hulk. At least in the movies. But in the comics, the Mad Titan has been defeated quite often already by Adam Warlock, Captain Marvel, Wolverine, Drax and Star-Lord, Deadpool, Squirrel Girl, Lockjaw, and Kazaa. Kazaa?
Who?
Can Wolverine swim? The answer is yes and no. Since his bones are alloyed with adamantium, he weighs a lot more than a normal human would. But in some comics he's shown being able to swim. I don't know. In my mind he always kinda just sinks to the ocean floor like a hippo and then runs instead of actually swimming. How does Vision go through walls?
Viz, we talked about this.
Yes, but the door was open, so I assumed that...
It is said that he reduces his density to nothingness, which doesn't really make any sense, since even massless particles like photons can't pass through solid objects, but I guess it's just Marvel logic. Are the Illuminati in Marvel? Actually, yes. In the Marvel comics, there's a secret group called the Illuminati, founded by Iron Man, Professor X, Mr. Fantastic, Black Bolt, Doctor Strange, and Namor, and first appeared in New Avengers 7, published 2005. Their purpose was to make decisions and take actions often behind the scenes that are deemed necessary to maintain stability and prevent a global crisis. How tall are the Avengers? Captain America stands at a solid 6 feet and 2 inches, Thor 6 feet 6 inches, the Hulk 6 feet 7 inches, Black Panther at a respectable 6 feet, Scarlet Witch at 5 feet 6 inches, Hawkeye at 5 feet 9 inches, so on Tinder he would be 6 feet, and Spiderman, the Short King, at 5 feet 7 inches. What is the most expensive Marvel comic? The comic titled Amazing Fantasy 15, released 1962, got auctioned off for $3.6 million and features the first appearance of everyone's favorite web-slinger, Spider-Man. What are the Infinitystones? The Infinitystones are 6 gem-like objects that were created with the Big Bang and represent space, mind, reality, power, time, and soul. Thanos collected all of them to complete his trip, so he could not only have the hardest pull-ups, but also the best Instagram flicks. Why is Deadpool so ugly? At least in the movie, Wade Winston Wilson gets diagnosed with cancer, and in an attempt to cure him, he undergoes experimental treatments that give him an insane healing factor, kinda like Wolverine. But it did not get rid of his cancer, so his body constantly gets attacked by cancer cells and regenerates at the same time, leaving his whole body scarred and deformed.
It's a horror movie.
Can Deadpool die? I mean, not really. He has been turned into ashes by Thor and still regenerated, so as long as there's anything left of his body, he will regenerate, but I personally think that he could be killed by something like the Thanos snap. There's also a theory that Thanos himself cursed Deadpool with immortality because they were both simping hard for death, so to prevent him from ever even talking to her, Thanos cursed him. Yeah. That's some professional level of cock blocking. Why does Wolverine die then? If Deadpool and Wolverine have the same kind of power, how does Wolverine die then? In the Logan movie, we see a very different Wolverine. He's older, slower, and his healing factor barely working anymore. But why did he even age after living for hundreds of years? If we look a little bit closer, we can see that it's not just old age, but also the Adamantium skeleton poisoning him from the inside. In the movie, it's also stated that no new mutants were born naturally since years. That can be tracked back to a shady biotech corporation that is possibly mixing mutant suppressing chemicals into food and water supply, especially through corn syrup, which is basically in everything. So I guess this affects Logan too and weakens him even more. He wasn't just getting old, he was being worn down from the inside out by time, science, and a world that didn't have room for mutants anymore. Why did Thanos kill half of the universe? Thanos didn't wipe out half of the universe just because he was evil. In Avengers Infinity War, we learned that he genuinely believed he was saving it. According to him, the universe was out of balance, overpopulated, low on resources, and headed for collapse. So his solution?
Genocide.
At random.
To restore balance and give everyone else a better chance at survival. Even though the population would eventually grow back, so it's more like a temporary fix than a permanent solution. And also, let's not forget, he literally had the power of a god. With all 6 Infinity Stones, he could have just doubled the resources instead of halving the people. In the comics, on the other side, as we already mentioned, he was hardcore simping for Lady Death, and to please her he killed half of all living beings. I mean, she's Lady Death, that ass must be life-changing. What are all the Venomversions? Over the years, we've seen a lot of different characters bind with the symbiote. Some of the more famous ones are Eddie Brock, the OG and most iconic Venom, and obviously Peter Parker. Like Wolverine, Deadpool, Captain America, Hulk, Thor, Doctor Strange, Iron Man, Black Panther, Groot, Rocket, Storm, Daredevil, Ghost Rider, Punisher, and a bunch of other crazy ones. Who is the one above all? The one above all is probably the closest thing to God. He's the creator of the strongest characters, and he's also often depicted as Stan Lee or Jack Kirby. What is the weirdest alternative universe? Since there's basically an infinite amount of universes, there are also some pretty weird ones, including a fantasy X-Men universe, a cowboy universe, Planet of the Apes style universe, a universe where everyone is a plushie, another one where Invisible Woman rules as queen in a medieval themed universe, the famous zombieverse where everyone is a flesh-eating zombie, a manga-verse, and also just some wacky characters like Croctor Strange and Throg. He's Thor, but a frog. What is the name of Thor's hammer?
Mjolnir?
Jonathan?
Just like that. That's all there is to it.
Can Magneto lift Thor's hammer? Yeah, he can. While not gaining any abilities from it, we see him at least lift and control the hammer in the comics. Who can actually lift Thor's hammer? Obviously there's Thor and Magneto, but we also see Steve Rogers being able to lift it, Jane Foster, Vision, Loki, Wonder Woman in the DC crossover, same as Superman, Black Panther, Storm, the Red Hulk, at least in space where there's no gravity, Odin, and the elevator.
But if you put the hammer in an elevator, it would still go up. Elevator's not worthy.
What is the Arc-reactor? It's said to be a clean energy source based on repulsor technology. And sadly, the only part we still need for a real-life Iron Man suit, since flying with a charging cable is rather difficult. Can you clone Deadpool? So there's this popular theory that if Deadpool's body regenerates, what would happen if you chop him in half? Do just 2 Deadpools grow back? While being a funny theory, we actually see him get split in half multiple times, and usually only one side regenerates. But in the comics, there's been a case where someone collected body parts that Deadpool lost in battle and fused them together to a new separate entity known as Evil Deadpool. So it is possible to kinda clone him that way. What are the differences between comics and movies? The MCU movies, at least in phase 1 till 4, were mostly centered around the Infinity Saga from the comics, but really it's only loosely inspired by it at best. There are just too many differences to name all of them, but a few big ones are: Tony Stark didn't die in the Infinity Gauntlet storyline in the comics, there wasn't a 5-year time jump either, the heroes, including some X-Men, were able to defeat Thanos immediately after he snapped half of the universe to death. Also, Spider-Man has been a hero just as long as Iron Man, so they never had this mentor thing going on. Asgard hasn't been destroyed in the comics, and Hela is not one of Odin's kids. Speaking of different parents, Ego is also not the father of Star-Lord. What? Quicksilver didn't just die on his first mission and had a pretty successful career as an Avenger. As we already talked about earlier, Thanos had different reasons to kill half of the universe. Also, Ultron was actually created by Hank Pym in the comics and not Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. What happened to the people who got snapped? Everyone affected by the snap got reduced to an atomic level, so technically they just stopped existing completely. But when they got snapped back into reality, it was like a 5-year time jump. Kinda like a coma, but they didn't even age, since they literally did not exist anymore. What is the difference between mutants and other heroes? Mutants are humans born with genetic defects, causing them to develop new abilities. Most superheroes, on the other hand, are born like normal people but get their power through failed science experiments, cosmic radiation, drugs, money, or, just like every normal person, drinking ego bathwater. In what order should I watch the MCU? Okay, so the only right order to watch all movies in is Captain America the First Avenger, Captain Marvel, Iron Man, Iron Man 2, The Incredible Hulk, Thor, The Avengers, Thor, Dark World, even though you don't really have to watch that one because it's kinda bad, Iron Man 3, Captain America, The Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, The Avengers, Age of Ultron, Antman, Captain America Civil War, Black Widow, Spider-Man Homecoming, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Thor, Ragnarok, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, Spider-Man Far From Home, Shang-Chi, The Legend of the Ten Rings, Eternals, Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Thor, Love and Thunder, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, The Marvels, Deadpool and Wolverine, Captain America, Brave New World. Who are the Fantastic Four? The Fantastic Four is a group of superpowered individuals. Their members are Reed Richards, also known as Mr. Fantastic, Sue Storm, aka Invisible Woman, Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, and Ben Grimm, aka The Thing. and they were first introduced in the year 1961 in the issue of Fantastic Four #1. What's the Avengers' favorite food? Hulk loves his beans, what the fuck? Tony Stark loves cheeseburgers.
I don't have to do anything. I've been in captivity for 3 months. There are 2 things I want to do. I want an American cheeseburger.
Steve Rogers just likes that modern food isn't just boiled.
Food's a lot better. We used to boil everything.
Natasha Romanoff loves, no idea how to pronounce that, piroshki, something like that, I don't know. Thor enjoys roast meats and vegetables, and Bucky Barnes loves pancakes. Are the Marvel movies military propaganda? There's a conspiracy theory that Marvel movies contain subtle military propaganda, but it is really just all speculations based on the fact that some Marvel movies are partly funded by the Department of Defense, and in return might show the American military in a very favorable way. Can Ant-Man kill Thanos? Since Ant-Man can make himself incredibly small, fans often theorized that he could enter someone's body and then regrow himself while still being inside of them. Besides this being extremely gross, he technically would be able to do this, but it might be a little bit different than what you imagine, because he wouldn't just burst out in an explosion, it would more likely just harm both of them, kinda like we saw in a... Will there be a new Avengers movie? Yes, there's always a new Avengers movie. Currently, the next announced Avengers movie, titled Doomsday, is supposed to release on the 29th of April, 2026, and features the return of Robert Downey Jr., but not in his iconic Iron Man role, but as the bad guy this time, Dr. Doom. How many Marvel characters are there? While there's no exact number, it is over 80,000 characters. That is more than twice the population of Liechtenstein. Thank you for watching all the way till the end, and consider subscribing, it really helps a lot. Thank you.